Have you ever wanted to program a game for your favourite vintage platform? I know I have, and in my case that would probably be for the Amiga computer. And back in the day when this dropped through my letterbox, this is Amiga format from November of 1993, I was presented with an opportunity which I didn't take, because on the cover disc was Blitz Basic 2. It says, try your hand at programming with our fully working version of this superb new language. A language specifically geared towards making games on the Amiga. Did I do it? Ooh, what's this on cover disc 2? Overdrive by Team 17. I ended up playing that an awful lot, and Blitz Basic didn't get a look in. There are many reasons for that. I was tinkering with Amos already, quite unsuccessfully, and because we were at the end of 1993, my mind was already into the IBM PCs, and I was thinking about how can I make the leap from the Amiga to the PC, and didn't want to invest a huge amount of time in a new programming language on a platform that I was probably going to be departing soon. However, today I want to right that wrong. I want to see what Blitz Basic 2 is all about. So I'm going to attempt to make a game. I am not a games programmer, so this could go horribly wrong, but I attempt to make a game. I'm going to share that journey with you. I'm going to show you the result. I'm going to show you me slipping down the rabbit hole of coding insanity, and I'm going to share with you some of the strange tool choices I make along the way to make my game. We're also going to chat to a chap called Sven in Germany who keeps Blitz alive in the modern day. And we're going to meet Rob and chat to him. He is perhaps the most prolific Blitz coder and tutorial maker that I've come across. But first of all, let's learn a little bit more about Blitz Basic. Coded by the late Mark Sibley in 1993 for the Commodore Amiga, Blitz Basic was designed to make coding, especially games, accessible to new programmers. It was to have the accessibility of BASIC, but to include routines that could make quick and powerful results. The sooner a new coder could get a sprite on the screen and make an explosion sound, the more likely they are to be enthused and empowered to learn more, and magazines reviewed it favourably. It was described as blisteringly fast by Amiga Computing, while CU Amiga said, if you want to know exactly what makes the Amiga tick without having to buy 15 manuals and learn assembler, and C, there is no better way. It produces true Amiga software. Get it? And while gaming was the hook for many to give this a go, Blitz also offered a suite of Amiga window, menu and gadget commands to create applications for Workbench, the GUI desktop environment for the platform. The result was a powerful language that borrowed from C and Pascal and allowed inline assembler for advanced users who really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty. But this being 1993, time was against Blitz and the Amiga. Within a year or so, Commodore would be in crisis, and as I said, I, like many, would move on to the PC. That didn't stop the language though. It would go on to be published for Windows in 2000, before being expanded upon with Blitz 3D, Blitz Plus and Blitz Max in 2004, but those are a decade on and a different platform from that Amiga Format magazine. The magazine that made me question, could a basic language really achieve the results that it claimed? If you want to get a head start with PCBs, there's no better place than PCBWay.com, where you can order PCBs, hire their design services, get your 3D prints made, or even have them fabricate metal parts for you. Every body, including mine, is at PCBWay.com. And don't forget their shared projects page where you can order retro projects in one click. We thank PCBWay.com for supporting the channel and the museums. Woo. Well, let's find out, shall we? I've got my copy of Amiga Format, issue 52, November 1993, with Blitz Basic on the cover. And you can see here, this is my desktop, and I'm using an emulated Amiga 500 with the cover disc there. Now, of course, if you wanted to try this for yourself, you do it on a real Amiga, of course. You could do it on your Amiga Mini, WinUAE, Amiga Forever, however you want to do it, just to make it as easy and accessible as possible. And honestly, I would recommend using a modern computer in emulation, just because, as you'll see later as I get more into this, it's just easier to transfer files between the modern and the old system and get what you want to do done in a more efficient manner. Or not, as I'll show you. But I started here with Amiga Format issue 52. And there's two things of interest to me, or two things from my memory on here. One is Blitz Basic itself, which I didn't really get into. But the other thing is Zombies, which is an example program written in Blitz Basic, designed to inspire you to give the programming language a try. And it looks like this. We had games like Terminator 2, the arcade, fresh in our minds at the time. And this is a really good example for a basic programming language. I mean, it's pretty advanced in terms of the graphics it's presenting us, the gore. It came with a 15 certificate on the front of the magazine. It is inspiring, and it is nice to think, okay, perhaps I have the tools to achieve this. Easier said than done, of course, but that's where we started, and for me, that's where I started and ended. So let's do the thing I didn't do before, and let's actually expand Blitz Basic. We're not really installing it because just as back in the day I didn't have a hard drive, it's just uncompressing it to a blank floppy disk. So I'm going to do that now, and there will be editing throughout this so that you're not just sat watching disks load. And now we've got our Blitz Basic 2 disk with some examples, some further examples, and these are examples that are included in the magazine, and it guides you through how to create a text-based dungeon game and something called Isoblast, but we're going to ignore that for now. I'm just going to run the program, and this should take us into the program editor. And there we are, a very Amiga looking cursor. We'll press okie dokie. This is the Amiga format version. There we go. And that appears to be it. We've got some menus at the top to compile and run the program. And we've got our text editor, and that's it. We are now in the programming environment. So it would be rude not to do some kind of hello world thing. And we won't see much of that because it will just do it quickly and end, I think. Let's find out. Yeah, we didn't see any of that, so we need to put some kind of pause in there. Little while loop that will just sit until the mouse button is pressed. I've probably got that completely wrong. No, it worked. Okay. Hello, cave dwellers. That's our hello world. Now press the mouse and we're back. That's it. We're into our basic programming language. So at this point, I thought, okay, I'm going to set up my dream Amiga. I'm not going to use a stock 500 with the disk drive. I'm going to set up a 4000 because Blitz supports AGA. I'm going to set up a hard drive, virtual hard drive that I can shift files between. Nice high resolution screen, and let's get stuck into learning Blitz Basic 2. And then I'll be able to present a retrospective on Blitz Basic 2 to you. But it got completely derailed when I discovered there's something called AmiBlitz. Now, AmiBlitz is a currently supported, currently updated version of Blitz Basic 2 for the Amiga available today. Blitz Basic had such a following and such love for it back in the day that people maintain it, or a person maintains it, and has made an even better version. So let's switch to that then. It's as simple as going to GitHub, downloading AmiBlitz, dropping it onto my emulated Amiga, a 4000 now with a higher resolution screen. There it is, AmiBlitz 3. And we are ready to go. So let's look at that for comparison. And you can immediately see we've got a much more feature-rich IDE to work with. We've got other windows going on over here. We've got something that I found was completely lacking in the first one. We've got help. And within that, an instruction browser. So what did I do? I did Joy B. There we go. We can immediately bring up help on all of the commands. So that's really nice if we don't have an original manual. So that's me. I was ready to go down the rabbit hole of Blitz and use this much more modern version, much more inviting version to start learning the language. But once I'd learned the language, I was going to face, or I'd learned enough of the language to be dangerous, I should say. I was going to be faced with the same challenge that anyone is faced with that sets out to create a game, and that's inspiration. Zombies was helpful, of course, but there was one game that really stands out for Blitz Basic as being the poster child, if you like, of the programming language. Let's take a look at that. And what better poster child could there be for the programming language than Skid Marks? Avoiding the obvious joke. Skid Marks was a sublime game in its own right. We're not saying this is good, considering it's written in Blitz Basic. It's just a good game. It sold well, and it made a lot of people very happy because it was so much fun to play, especially with built-in link-up facilities to have multiplayer gaming across multiple Amigas. Developed by Andrew Blackburn with art by Rodney Smith and music by Anthony Milas, the manual proudly declares Skid Marks was developed in Blitz 2. It also credits Blitz creator Mark Sibley for creating the nasty two-way road in one of the tracks, And this is fun, it even goes on to explain the game comprises of 800 frames of compressed animation for the cars, pre-rendered at every angle, a bit like Chris Sawyer would later go on to do with games like Roller Coaster Tycoon. It also states that the percentage of basic code in skid marks is some 95% in total, with just the remaining 5% being a small amount of machine code by Simon Armstrong, which looks like this. And any game that needs quadratic calculations in machine code is probably going to be beyond my capabilities, if we're all honest. So Skid Mark's a fantastic example. It was successful enough in its own right to produce sequels like Super Skid Marks and Track Packs and all sorts of other things. But let's keep things realistic. I'm not about to create skid marks, or am I? So let's do it then. Recreating skid marks, and we'll start with our quadratic calculations in machine code. No, I'm just kidding. That would be insane. And before I set out to actually try and create my own game, as I got more familiar with the Blitz language, I reached out to Rob Cranley, who is a very experienced user of Blitz, and we'll talk more to him later. But I asked for his tips on how to get started with Blitz Basic.
The thing is to not get to manage your ambitions to start with. But it is a lot of fun, and the Amiga is a lovely machine to code for. It's kind of the last of the home computers, so it's easy to kind of, you can do whatever you want with the entire machine, and that's kind of one of the things that makes it nice. And Blitz will give you that, and it makes it easy to get results without too much faff. So it treads a nice kind of zone between learning assembly or learning C and using like Scorpion engine kind of kit. So it's in the middle. You have to do a bit of programming and you have to learn a bit about how the machine works, but you don't have to get too down in the nitty gritty if you don't want to.
Sage words indeed. So we're going to try and keep our expectations manageable. And in doing that, I've decided to take inspiration from games like Locomotion back on my Amstrad CPC, Chips Challenge, and Pipe Mania, mostly Pipe Mania. And the reason for that being it is a tile-based puzzle game. I can keep myself within the constraints of a grid using tiles, and that avoids the needs for things like scrolling graphics, in most cases animated graphics, and things like that. So it should keep a game or an idea for a game fairly simple. So with that in mind, I set about creating my first sample program to try and start to get the pieces of that game in place. Here it is. It's a big old mess, and just a caveat, please don't use anything that I've done in programming as a tutorial. People like Rob can help you with that. This is hacking. This is me hacking away at a language as I learn it and trying to make things happen. So there's a short program here where we're going to go into Blitz mode. There are two modes in Blitz Basic. Normal mode, which is used for your Windows and your gadgets and making workbench style applications. And Blitz mode, which does away with all of that and is really used for games making. So I'm setting my resolution 320 by 256. I am creating a new type. Types are really useful. So that's a variable with sub-variables within it, if you like. So I've created a thing called tile, and for each tile that I create, it can have assigned to it a piece number. It's center X position, center Y position, top left X, top left Y position, and we can build on that list to make it more and more useful as I create a game. So I've created a type called tile. I've created an array of tiles. So I've got lots of tiles now. I've defined the properties of the tile. So I've made a loop and defined the position that each one will be based on the tile size. So every 16 pixels, we're going to create its position to draw it. And then what have I done then? And then I'm drawing the tiles. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That should be, and we've drawn a box for what would be my grid. So let's run this and I'll show you. There it is. I've created a grid and I've created tiles. All the elements that I need to work on a tile-based game. Now, to go beyond that, I need to start working on getting some actual graphics in and not just plotting purple pixels. So that's when I move to version 2, which looks like this and is starting to get a little bit more organized, starting to take my code layout a little bit more seriously. Our tile type has expanded, so we've now told it each tile can have a background tile assigned to it. We can say, does this tile block the player from going through it? Is this the start tile? Is this the goal tile to get to? So we're expanding on our types. We've defined a color palette. So I've chosen the colors. I do want to try and make this compatible with a Amiga 500. So we're just sticking to 16 colors. We're not going into AGA territory. And for the graphics, okay, this is old school. Right down here, I've defined data for each tile type. So here, for example, is a straight pipe. Let's make this window bigger. It's a great big chunk of data that says 0 is no pixel. And then each number aligns with the colors in the palette. So 15 is black, that's the middle of the pipe. And then we've got some reds for the out of the pipe. So I'm drawing by numbers here. So I've got some different styles of pipe that I've lifted from Pipe Mania. And again, in the same way as my previous example, I'm drawing a grid. And now I'm drawing pipes on it instead of blocks of color. So let's see how that looks. Almost looks like a game, doesn't it? And I've put key assignments in so I can move. There we go, moving the pipe around, and I can place the pipe. There we go. And it looks kind of gamey, doesn't it? That progressed then to version 3 with a few more refinements. Here we go. So I've got my tiles. I've got a flashing box around the tile. I can spin it so we can see all my different tile types. And we can place the tiles to almost fool ourselves into thinking we have some kind of game going on here. Now this brings us on to our next problem. The key mechanic for this game is to have water flowing. When a timer runs out, it has to flow from the start tile all the way to the end tile. And if there's a break in the pipeline, then it's game over. How do we do that? Well, that brings us on to a problem that I always faced when I attempted to make games over the years in different languages, whether it be Pascal or C or Amos, which is my own limitations up here in the grey matter, in the fleshy parts. I can't always get my head around problems and logic and the maths that I need. And when you hit a brick wall, it becomes quite frustrating. And that's kind of when you give up on it and just put it behind you and move on to the next thing. And I didn't want that to happen. I thought, what tools are available to us in the modern day to help with retro games programming? And I gave ChatGPT a try. A controversial subject for some, but I guess it depends how you approach it. In this case, my goal is to learn Blitz Basic. So that doesn't mean saying, ChatGPT, give me the code to make this happen so that I can copy and paste it in. Maybe it can do that, maybe it can't, but I'm not interested in that. Really, I wanted to treat it like the mentor that I never had, the games programming mentor that I never had back in the day. So I gave it my source code, I gave it the Blitz Basic manual, I described the problems I was trying to overcome, and time again, so long as I said to it, describe this to me using pseudocode and English, don't try and write the code, I want to understand how to overcome the problem, it was really useful. Really useful. And through using ChatGPT, very quickly, I got to version 4. So in this version, we've got some additional variables for the water flowing, flow direction, distance, increment, the pixel that the flow's at the moment. And we've got some flow logic. Where's that? Here we go, updating the flow. So it is periodically, let's make this window bigger, saying if flowing equals 1, select the flow direction. It's working out if it's reached the edge of a tile and then altering the direction of the flow. It's stopping the flow if the tile it's flowing into has no valid join, which means I get to use variables such as bottom hole. And then it will flow into the next tile if there is a valid join. And it may also need to change direction mid-tile. So when it's going around a curve, it will come across and then it needs to go up. So with the help of ChatGPT, we sort of thrashed this all out. And I'm sure there are much more efficient ways of coding this, but there's always a fine line with me between condensing the code down to make it super smooth, super small, and efficient and making it readable. Sometimes I'm happy to have what could be a smaller loop broken out just because it helps my brain to go back and understand it, particularly 6 months later when I'm trying to figure out how all this works. So let's take a loop at the game. There we go. There's my little dot. Bonk. Flowing around. So we've got some pathfinding going on now. And we can make our pipeline and we can get our water from start to finish. But it doesn't really look like water, does it? Let's make it look more flowy like. It is, of course, not infallible. ChatGPT here. I am ranting at it in my comments on revision 5. No logic needed. Shut up, ChatGPT, because I've added crossroads in this section and it was trying to massively overcomplicate any kind of logic or algorithm needed to calculate the passing of the crossroad tile. It needed far less than ChatGPT was trying to tell me it needed. So I figured that out in the end. And that now looks like this. I should be able to find a crossroad tile. Okay, let's flow that. There we go. We go around the crossroads. That's satisfying. Now we need to make our flow look much more like real water and not just a pixel bouncing around. And I start to do that in revision 6, but I also start to use some other tools to help me because I'm growing in confidence really at this point that I might actually be able to do this. I might actually be able to make a game with Blitz. And so I'm going to show you the tools I use. No laughing, please, because it might seem a bit bonkers. You know, we've talked about ChatGPT already, but another tool that I use, okay, ready yourselves, it is Microsoft Excel. Yep. That's right, the Premiere Pixel Editor. Why use Deluxe Paint on an Amiga when you can use Microsoft Excel? Yeah, allow me to explain. It certainly lends itself to the type of game that I'm making because it's tile-based. So I've got my defined tile here. We know the size the tiles are going to be. I've put into Excel the Amiga palette and I've used conditional formatting. So when I type in a number, it will use the palette that's defined to change the color in Excel. So I can see what my pipes will look like. But most importantly, I can drag and line up and just make sure my different pipe types are going to line up for the water to flow. And then I can use formulas to make 1 pixel and have them rotate and be confident that it's all still going to line up. There's my background tile. So I'm just exporting that as a CSV, dumping that into a data file, and then loading that into Blitz, where it plots it, captures it as a shape, and then I can use that like any other type of graphics that I may have imported. Yes, Blitz has native import facilities to take a graphics file and import an image. Just bear with me. This is just how I've chosen to do things, or how I started to do things, and then it kind of snowballed. And finding success in doing this helped me to find a way to make that water flow seem a bit more realistic. So instead of trying to plot the flow all the way around using pixels on the fly, I created flow data. Okay, so this is a copy of my tiles, and then I've done away with the graphics surrounding the tile. This is just the black pipe in the center of the tiles, and then I've numbered 1 to 25, and this is a predefined route for the water to flow down. So it starts at 1, it goes to 25, or if the water has come into the tile from the other direction, because we could come in from any sides or 4 sides if it's a crossroads, it will then count backwards and flow backwards. So we've effectively created 25 frames of animation. What does that look like? Well, let's have a look. Here we are in version 6 when I'm first trying to feel out that idea. I've already lost the game. I've placed a tile in the wrong place. Let's start that again. Spin the tile, Neill. There we go. And this will look wrong and bad and not working, but I was just starting to try and prove the concept at this point. So we start flowing and nothing lines up and it all goes a bit wrong, but you know, the bend at the end is bending the wrong way, but I'm starting to make progress on this. So I continue to develop that, and I'll show you where I get to in just a moment. But in the meantime, let's go and have a chat to Sven in Germany, who is the man behind AmiBlitz, and to Rob Cranley, who is probably the most prolific AmiBlitz user I know and creator of many tutorial videos and articles out there to help people springboard into learning Blitz Basic. The links to all of that will be in the video description. Let's go and hear their memories of Blitz Basic and all about AmiBlitz.
So I started with Amos, the Creators Edition or something like that it was called, and I wanted to code games as everyone else who bought Amos, and I realized making games is not that easy. That was not me coding games, and then I thought, okay, coding is cool, but coding games not. So what can I do? I could do serious applications. Yeah, on the Workbench desktop, I could do a window, and I could do a word processor or something like that. But the problem was that Amos was not capable to do system-friendly applications at that time. And that was the reason that I switched to Blitz Basic 2.
So I was kind of late to the Amiga in the sort of mid 90s, I suppose, 1994 or so. So it replaced my Atari 8-bit. So I had an 800 XL. So that I kind of went onto the Amiga. That was kind of like seeing the progression that my friends had made, and I was like, okay, that's the next computer I want. And mainly the thing that I liked doing on the Atari was programming, and obviously in Atari Basic and a little bit of assembly. So that was it. So the intention was to replace the Atari, but a friend of mine a little while afterwards came up with this cover disc, and I had the demo of this Blitz Basic on it. And so I had to go with this, and this was amazing. I loved it from the get-go, because it was basic on steroids.
I never understood how Blitz Basic worked in the 90s. Yeah, I got some source codes from other guys, and I opened it in this editor, in this SuperTED, and it didn't work. There were some commands, some functions that were not recognized, and I had no idea why does it not work. So, and then I thought, okay, it's a project to just learn how does this damn thing work.
It came with a very sort of rudimentary built-in help thing, and you could click on it, and it gave you sort of a table of contents. It was basically sort of a condensed version of the actual manual. Now, I went, like, after playing with this for a while, it was kind of a limited demo, so you couldn't actually make any executables with it. So you could only run them from the editor. But after a while, I did go out and buy Blitz Basic. And so I got that. So, and I still have it, still on my shelf, along with all my other programming books and much more serious books. But there's a ring-bound manual for that, and that was my Bible for many years.
I still own it. But unfortunately, the manual is just German. Yeah, it's German.
Now, yeah, AmiBlitz came along. Well, that was because I was still using Blitz Basic all the way through, and AmiBlitz 2 came along at I'm going to say, I can't remember now, but say 2005, 2008, maybe that kind of area when nobody was using Amigas. There was the absolute trough of it, you know.
And then there was a guy, a German guy too, Bernd Rösch was its name, and he got the permission from the developer, from Asset Software, to use Blitz Basic 2. He didn't get the source code, but he was allowed to disassemble it, and he added some features.
Blitz Basic was open source because they didn't want anything to do with it anymore since they'd moved to the PC. And so this guy came out with the open source version, and he had made a few changes to it, added some includes and some wrappers for some Amiga OS libraries, and yeah, it was nice.
At the beginning, when I got this source code, it was 98% assembler, because it was just a disassembled executable of the compiler and the editor with some changes the Bernd included. This was basic, so there was huge assembler code with some sections of basic, and that was another interesting thing. I could learn assembler. my first the project was I want to convert all this assembler code into the Blitz into basic code to learn assembler and to learn how this damn thing works.
Then AmiBlitz 3 came out, and it was a totally different editor. It was a huge improvement in terms of in terms of the editor, the IDE. It just felt so much more modern and almost kind of like, like as far as the Amiga is concerned, it was like almost as modern as you can get.
I think 2 years. 2 years to no 4 years at least. I needed, yeah. Now we have the time where at least the IDE, the editor, is nearly 100% basic. So that is a cool thing, that you can compile the IDE with Blitz Basic, and you can compile the compiler with Blitz Basic with itself. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. The last project I remember was I guess the game is called Settle the World. Settle the World. So, and the guy who is doing this, he showed me that program, and he showed me how the waves are moving and all these things. And I said, what? This is possible with AmiBlitz? How did you do that?
Thank you to both for taking the time to talk to us. And as you come back to me now, if I press F for flow, we have a very suspiciously yellow looking liquid flowing through the pipes from start to finish in a way that really does please me. It's doing its job. However, as good as this looks, I have now hit a massive hurdle, because if I compile this and export it as an executable and then I try and run it on even an Amiga 1200, as that flow gets longer and longer, the game slows down and down and down and down. It's just not workable. And the reason for that is, well, let's cast my mind back to, say, 2002. I've got a computer with a Pentium 3 in it, or maybe an Athlon, and I'm doing some basic coding, making some games. My coding is massively inefficient. My loops are horrible, but it doesn't matter because the processors are so powerful. They just blat through it and I get away with it. The game is made. It doesn't matter. In this instance, we're looking at very specific hardware. I really want it to get down to an Amiga 500. An Amiga 1200 I'd be happy with if it can run on a stock Amiga 1200. It doesn't in this instance, and that's because I am drawing 70 tiles. I'm using the Blitz command to blitz 70 tiles. That's the background tiles. And then up to 70 pipes if every single one of those tiles was occupied, on top of the background. So that's 140 Blitz. And then as the flow is going, every frame trying to update the flow on the screen. It is just too much for this old hardware to handle. And I wasn't programming with the mindset of this very restrictive hardware that I need to think about and use appropriately. So I had to completely rethink how I approached this. And I'll show you that in the next version. This is the result of that rewrite. So it looks similar. I have added the tile selection box on the left. So that's the queue of the tile the player will get to play with next. So I'm progressing the game in that respect. But in terms of the graphics now, it is only updating anything that changes. We've done away with double buffering altogether. The pixels are placed and then nothing happens unless something changes. So the player's selection box, you'll notice I've left gaps where the pipes would be so that I don't have to redraw pixels. I'm not overwriting pixels when I move that around. I'm using palette swapping to get the animation on the player selection box. So that's just the palette flipping over to make it look like the marching ants on the corners. And well, let's flow it now. There's my water flow, looking blue, looking super quick and smooth, doing exactly what I want it to do, going all the way around the pipes in the correct way. And it is only ever plotting the front of that flow. So it will plot the pixels at the front. As a pipe is completely filled, it will flip the pipe from looking like an empty pipe to being a full pipe. So it's never having to replot those pixels again, and that part of the screen doesn't have to be updated again. So it's super efficient now and respectful of the hardware that we're working with. Runs fine on a 1200, runs fine on a 500. Phew, I thought we'd hit a massive roadblock there, but now we have got my brain on track and into the right way of thinking to deal with this old hardware. And then we're going to take quite a big leap now, because satisfied that I wasn't going to grind the hardware to a halt and I was getting to grips with the language, I just pushed on ahead and threw everything that I could at this game. I also wanted to get my code a bit more organized, because it was just one great big line of code with chunks that I needed to reuse if I wanted to do things like reset the level and start a new level. I needed reusable chunks of code. But because I'd been hacking from the very start and not really thinking about it, I hadn't thought from the beginning to write the functions and the statements that I needed to do it in that way. And it was a bit of a mess to pick apart. So I kind of settled on moving chunks of code into subroutines. So you can see I'm using lots of Go subs now. This is my main game loop down here. Go easy on me. At least I'm not using Go 2s. It is Go subs. And when I come to do my next game, because I'm loving this so much, it is now a hobby. While my wife is doing crosswords in the evening, this is my crossword. I like to tinker away with Blitz Basic now. I will write the next thing from the beginning with all of the knowledge that I've acquired from doing this. And write a better game. So go easy on me. Anyway, my main game routine, it's actioning what the player's done. Actually, no, it starts with timer actions. So it's triggering anything that's timer based. I've added a timer to kick the flow off. It checks if the flow has started, and if the water's flowing, it flows it. Processes any player's actions. I've added a tile transition effect. Once again, here comes Microsoft Excel. Just like the flow data. Look at this crazy mess. These are, think of PowerPoint, think of slide transitions. It's exactly that. It takes the tile and it processes the pixels in the, again, 25 frames from 1 to 25. And I've actually used ChatGPT to make these transitions. I gave it my grid and I said, I would like a swirl transition, or I would like a radial ripple transition. And it just puts the numbers in for me. It saves so much time and it gets some really cool effects. So if that doesn't make sense to you now, you'll see when the game runs. So I've got those transitions. Transitions are a penalty to the player because it means you're replacing a tile you've already placed. And you can do that, but you get about a 3 or a 4 second penalty for doing so. It draws the front of the flow because remember all the other tiles are flipping. It flips the tiles that need to be flipped. It updates the player's selection box that we're moving around. Blink character. I'll save that one for you in a minute. That's fun. And then it gets the player's input and on and on and on. It is not a finished game. I have got a huge amount still to do on this. But I have broken these subroutines now out into included files. So it's not just one great big file. Got my flow calculations in a file. All of my subroutines nicely named and described, just so that I can keep on top of things and make sense of it all. Game preparation routines, preparing the display, loading in all of that tile data. Subroutines, levels. So I can now, I've got 7 levels I've created, and each level, I'm just setting up each level. That could be broken out into a data file as well. This is where I am today. Let's just run it and I'll show you what I've created, inspired by issue 52 of Amiga Format magazine back in the day. Younger teenage me, I think, would be pretty pleased with this. Here it is. So on the right hand side, it counts down until the flow starts and it counts up until the flow increases in speed. You'll see I've had introduced blank tiles so that my levels, and there's music playing by the way, my levels can be all kinds of shapes and crazy designs. The tiles on the left in the queue that are being picked are not random, or at least the first 10 I can predefine. So it becomes a bit more of a achievable puzzle game rather than here's a load of random tiles and you might not be able to complete the level. These first 5 levels I'm treating as a kind of tutorial. The water will speed up now. So you get used to all the different tile types. We've given the game a name, Pump House Panic at the bottom left and a logo. And I've put the team at the top. And if you watch carefully, they will periodically blink at you. We've added blocking tiles, Holly's hard hats on this level, so you can't move the player's selection box through that. Oh, I need a right hand corner. Give me the right corner. Oh, you can see the transition now actually, because I'm going to replace this tile. You see there's the radial transition, which is quite nice. We've got other tile types you'll see in the queue. There's a reservoir tile, the fourth one down, which slows the flow to buy the player more time. If I press F, I can actually speed it up because I'm happy with my pipeline. I've created teleport tiles. Oh God, no, I need that one there. There we go, teleport tiles. That's those flashing ones. Again, using the palette flipping to make them look a little bit animated, but without having to re-blit. I'm trying to talk to you and focus on beating my game. I'm not very good at my own game, if I'm honest.
So here's a bit more of the game. It's been fun to create, and I hope you like what I've created. I'm not claiming it's the best game in the world by any means, but something much more important has happened in creating it. It's rekindled something in me. It's reconnected me with coding in a way that I haven't felt since the 90s, really, when I used to do quite a bit of programming, especially with C eventually. I started with just the C for Dummies book, taught myself as much as I could, and then paired that up with libraries. Like there was one called Allegro, which had functions for putting graphics and things on the screen, which made it a bit easier for me. And I used to love that and spend hours and hours doing that. And then I even went as far as studying software engineering at university before actually dropping out of that course, because as soon as it got serious for me, I kind of lost the passion and decided that isn't actually a career I want to go into. And I went off in a different direction in the IT industry. So programming kind of fell by the wayside, and the joy got left behind. And this has re-sparked it for me. And if you've ever wanted to write a game for the Amiga, if you've been on the same journey as me, and kind of lost that passion and used to enjoy programming, this is a really great place to start, especially when you pair it with AmiBlitz, the accessibility of AmiBlitz, the improvements and enhancements that brings, the accessibility of emulation, and then pairing it up with modern tools like Excel. I'm sure you can think of much better ways to streamline and create a tool set to create games, and graphics and music and all of the supporting assets to go with it. And because Blitz is so accessible, you can actually conceivably sit down an hour a few times a week and treat it like a Sudoku puzzle or a crossword, and purely as a hobby that you can dip in and out of and get results quick enough to feel like you're making progress. So I cannot endorse it highly enough, especially AmiBlitz. If I can help you in any way, head to our Discord server. I'll put a link down in the video description. I'll put links to everything we've talked about down there. Check out Rob's tutorials. Sven also has a Discord server, so there's lots of Blitz coders in there who can help you, and lots of forums tackling all sorts of subjects. Let me know your thoughts on the way I've approached this. Am I insane for using Excel? Is ChatGPT a great big no-no, or has it helped you with your programming and game making endeavors? I'd love to hear those conversations. Either way, I hope you've enjoyed what I've done today, and please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Check out retrocollective.co.uk if you want to come to the museum. And no, I won't be putting my game on display. It doesn't belong in a museum, but I'll keep tinkering with it and see if I can get it anywhere close to finished. And I'll certainly share it when it's tidied up a bit more for you all to poke fun at. Do let me know what you get up to with your own programming endeavors, and take care everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.